I also think that young people in particular, they are exposed to such relentless dopamine imagery, both still pictures, videos, whatever. And in particular, the last 3 weeks, if you're a young person with an impressionable mind and you're getting bombarded with some of the worst imagery imaginable, you know, babies dead, limbless and so on. If you're getting that on your feed all day long, which I'm seeing on mine, so they must be, it can only have an incredibly damaging effect to I think, a young generation already ripped with anxiety, ripped with problems about how to deal with the real world. And I think a lot of it is they're just seeing so much bad stuff all the time on social media, which when I was young, you just couldn't see it. You would not be able to access this kind of thing. You were protected in a way from the reality of things like warfare, and protected from this kind of imagery.
Yeah, well, again, it's a problem of technological revolution, because this new sensory system that we've produced, this new system of perception, it's a fire hose, first of all, that's impossible to govern. You can never get on top of it. It's infinite in its scope.
Yeah.
And then it allows the pathological and the terrible to spread as rapidly as the beneficial and the good. And so it is overwhelming. It's not just kids that have a hard time with that. I mean, it's just these technologies, well, what do we expect? They're insanely powerful and remarkable, but they carry with it all of the implications of that insane power on the pathological side. And we don't exactly know how to deal with it. We don't know how to regulate. We haven't evolved the social norms even that regulate online conduct. You know, I mean, when I block people on Twitter, let's say, I have qualms about it, you know. Well, I'm in favor of free speech. Do I block trolls online? And when exactly do I block them? You know, I've got more direct about that. I have a couple of rules. You know, if you're anonymous and you're annoying, it's like, you're done as far as I'm concerned. But that's just the beginnings of the evolution of anything approximating social norms. But aren't you just saying,
I mean, I've wrestled with that, because I've blocked, I think, 11,000 people or whatever it is. I can't remember what the latest tally is. I go on little block spurges sometimes. But to me, there's no contradiction between believing passionately in free speech, but also allowing yourself not to have to listen to it. You don't have to listen to what people are saying to you. Well, you have the right in a free democratic society to say, look, you're entitled to say whatever you want, but I don't actually have to listen to it. You're not preventing them from exercising their right to free speech. You're just saying, I don't want to hear it.
Well, that's why we have walls. Like that's a good example of the difference between the virtual world and the real world. I mean, you have a house, and it has walls and a door. And the reason for that is you don't want a random stranger to come in and just yell things at you whenever.
Right.
You know, and so what are the walls and the doors on social media? Well, we have no idea, because we thought, well, we'll democratize the public square. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that any narcissistic psychopath anywhere can say whatever they want to you and everyone you know. Well, you know, that's just not going to work. It's not going to work. There's always been criminals and quasi-criminals and troublemakers, and we have some mechanisms of regulation in the actual world and virtually no mechanisms of regulation whatsoever in the virtual world. And so, yeah, it's a tremendous problem. And it is also making it more and more difficult for us to distinguish what's real from what's not real, because you don't know when you're being played for a, what would you call, masochistic fool by a sadistic psychopath. And the answer to that is often.
Yeah.
You know, frighteningly often. And so my sense, like I've proposed this before, is like I think social media enterprises above a certain size should separate people with verified identities, verified by their site, not with some universal digital ID, separate them from the anonymous types. Like if the anonymous types want to post, no problem, but they shouldn't get to post with the actual human beings, because there's no responsibility, you know. And then you say, well, you know, maybe I'm a whistleblower and I'm standing for truth and I don't want to bear an undue responsibility for telling truth to power. It's like, my sense online is for every one whistleblower who's genuine, who's anonymous, there's 999 anonymous troll demons who are sadistic, right? Yeah. That's not a good ratio.
You interviewed Bibi Netanyahu quite recently, actually, a few months ago. A lot of pressure on him internally, a lot of criticism. Hamas released a video on Monday of some of the hostages attacking Netanyahu's administration for not having a ceasefire and so on. That was clear propaganda. But it also reflects what a lot of people in Israel feel about Netanyahu and the catastrophic failure of security and defense on October the 7th. He's resolutely refused to accept any responsibility or to apologize for that. Do you think he should?
Well, I guess I wouldn't presume to know. I mean, my observation about that was that, you know, people said, well, how could this happen? How could the Israeli defense systems be that porous? And I would say, our defense systems are way more porous than anybody would ever want to think. You know, it's very, very difficult to stop people who are willing to light themselves on fire to singe you. And any random person in a civilized society can cause an unbelievable amount of mayhem and trouble. And in order to forestall that possibility completely, which would be impossible in any case, we'd have to move towards a surveillance state like China, where we're being monitored 100% of the time, and then the bloody cure would be worse than the disease. It doesn't surprise me that Israel's defense was that porous. I don't think it cannot be in a society that's still vaguely free. And even if you lock people down, Jesus, you can still cause a lot of trouble if you're hell-bent on doing it. So should Netanyahu apologize for the failures of the Israeli defense system in relationship to the Hamas attack? I don't know enough to say. It isn't obvious to me that it failed any worse than you should expect a system like that to fail when it's faced by psychopathic terrorists who are being funded by outside sources who want to do nothing else but cause misery and mayhem. So I interviewed Netanyahu partly because I wanted to talk to him, because I was curious, and I was also an admirer of his economic reforms, the economic reforms that I think did raise Israel to this position of pronounced economic power and entrepreneurial capacity that they now possess, which also made them a more attractive partner during the Abraham Accords, because the Israelis had the possibility of offering to the Arabs the sharing of their technology and their entrepreneurial and managerial prowess. They had something to offer along with their, military strength. So I thought that was all to the good. I don't know enough about Netanyahu and about the intricacies of Israel politics. God, it's hard enough keeping track of my own country, to dare to say anything more than that. I'm glad I'm not in his shoes. How about that? That's, I can't imagine there's anything about that that's anything other than abysmally difficult, non-stop.
Dr. Jordan Peterson, what a fascinating hour. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Hey, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Piers.